last night. Now, the Greens have accused the federal government of obstructing the climate talks in South America.
Greens Leader Christine Milne joined me earlier via webcam from Lima in Peru.
What I'd like is a very strong text that is the negotiating document that will take us into a strong agreement in Paris. But I have to say, they're only up to paragraph 13 or 14 out of about 40 paragraphs. And the ones that they've done have got every single option available. So it's hard to see how they're going to get that work done in the next couple of days.
So is this turning into a meaningless conference then?
No, it's certainly not a meaningless conference, and there's a lot of goodwill from around the world to try and get a strong text, try to resolve some of the issues. But I have to say, Australia is not playing a constructive role.
What do you mean by that?
Well, Australia is working to take out of the text some of the really meaningful objectives. So, for example, yesterday they removed from the text the words, or tried to remove, global solidarity. They've also tried to remove a long-term temperature limit, when everybody knows the whole purpose of this is to constrain global warming to less than 2 degrees.
Can I just jump in there, Christine Milne? Tried to remove or managed to end up removing?
No, they haven't managed to remove it from the text, but the rest of the world is pretty shocked that Australia is even reneging on the 2-degree temperature limit that everybody had agreed to and Australia had signed on to.
Well, if it's not actually something they managed to achieve, then it's difficult to say that that's not a constructive role they're playing.
Well, it is a most unconstructive role to spend your time here trying to remove from the text things that have been agreed and should be the basis of even stronger moves. And now we've had the minister coming out saying that it would be ridiculous to agree to net carbon zero and to an end to fossil fuels by 2050. Well, it's not ridiculous. It's actually what you need to do if we are to avoid going beyond the tipping points that the science clearly has identified.
Well, the Trade Minister, Andrew Robb, has told business leaders at that climate change conference that Australia is not going to sign up to any new global deal if major trade competitors are not pulling their weight. What's your view of that?
Well, the country that's not pulling its weight is Australia and Canada with it. Talk about the two countries that are seen as really on the outer here in Lima are Canada and Australia. Because China and the US had their announcement ahead of the G20, because other countries are stepping up to higher targets and greater commitments, the role that Australia is playing, saying now that it won't sign up unless it gets what it wants, just means that Australia is going to be isolated. What that will mean, though, is that people will start to see Australia as a backwater and we will be bypassed by international capital, because there are really substantial economic opportunities by being involved in emission reduction and in inviting that money to go into new businesses, new technologies, new jobs in Australia. But that will not happen if we keep on trying to promote coal.
At the same time, though, Australia does have to look after its own business and financial interests. I wonder if you agree with Julie Bishop, who said that the distinction in conversations around this climate change conference, the distinction between developed and developing countries is unhelpful now and irrelevant now when it comes to emissions, and it doesn't necessarily lead to best outcomes. Do you agree with that?
I certainly think we need to try to find ways beyond that impasse. It's not helpful for the countries to fall back on negotiating positions that they've had for years.
Because just to jump in there, Christine Milne, because the point she's making is that emissions are emissions, no matter where they come from.
And that is correct, but where they have come from that has led to the level of global warming we are now seeing is from the big emitters in the developed world. And that's why a lot of countries say that there's a historical responsibility to pay for compensation effectively to countries that are already suffering because of global warming. And of course, they're our Pacific neighbours. But in Australia itself, it's in our best interest to act on climate change, because we're already seeing the impacts of extreme weather. You know, this summer we will see heat waves in Australia. We will see more extreme bushfire days. We are already experiencing global warming as everyone else is. So it's in our best interests to take this on and take a leadership role rather than be a laggard.
Now, look, the government announced yesterday that it was going to make a donation of $200 million from foreign aid to the Green Climate Fund, that International Green Climate Fund. Was that an announcement that you were happy to hear?
Well, that was an announcement made here, and it's pretty much an indication of the extent to which the pressure from the rest of the world is starting to get to Australia. I was, of course, pleased that $200 million is going into the Green Climate Fund, but when you see it's coming out of foreign aid, that is completely unacceptable. It should be additional to foreign aid, especially when you consider the government took $7.6 billion out of foreign aid in this year's budget. So what we wanted to see was new money going into the Green Climate Fund, but everyone around here is very suspicious of what Australia has, the motivation for what Australia has done, because Australia seems to think that $200 million will be enough to buy itself back into a stronger negotiating position, and they want to use that negotiating position to weaken the rule. So people are a bit suspicious about Australia thinking $200 million will buy them the position that they want in the talks.
Christine Milne, our time is tight this morning, but thanks for joining us. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Virginia.